Sup, guys? 1-2 yesterday. Even though a bunch of my baseball leans that I gave out on the show pretty much all got there and not the actual plays. The plays were 1-1. What can you do? Cubs won in extra innings by 1. That one got there. Colorado, if that was the first 5-inning bet, that would have won. Colorado was winning, I think, 4-1 into the 6th inning, and their bullpen totally blew the game. They lost 5-4, so that's great. And then, of course, the Boston Celtics. I was at the game last night. I was at the shot, the Jaylen Brown shot. Looked like it was a game where the Celtics, they were hovering kind of right in the vicinity of that number all game, basically. Should they have covered? Maybe not, but close. And, well, statistically, the game was pretty close. So, statistically, I guess you could say that, yeah, they probably shouldn't have covered. Although Indiana lost the turnover battle by enough that I think maybe the Celtics probably should have gotten there. The Celtics led all game, man. They were up 12-0 right out of the gate. They did blow that lead, but they still maintained a lead. I don't think they were trailing until late in the game, I would say. Or maybe, did they ever trail in the second half, or second quarter? I don't know, because I think it was tied at halftime, but I think they still hadn't trailed yet. Celtics rebuilt the lead in the third quarter. They were up 13, I think, with 3 minutes left in the third quarter or something like that. And then Indiana closed that quarter on a 14-2 run, including a ridiculous 3-point prayer, basically, at the buzzer from Halliburton from way over on the side. I was a few rows. I was across from where the Indiana bench was, in the first actual row, so 5 rows back, basically. So Big Papi, David Ortiz was down to my left by a bit, and McLovin was. If you were watching on TV, you saw all these people that were there. It was kind of down to my right down there, and Guy Fieri was across from me. Fieri was across the court from me. Man, it was wild. Leon Poe, former Celtic and Pacer, was there too. Wild stuff. Fun time. But anyway, Halliburton, hit that 3 from way over to my left there. Couldn't believe that went in. That cut it to 1. Then the Celtics didn't really play well in the fourth quarter, of course. Wound up falling down, I think 5 in the final minute, maybe. Cut it back to 3, and then the Celtics had multiple opportunities to score. I think they had a couple possessions where Indiana was only, I think the Celtics might have cut it to 1, and then Indiana pushed it back to 3 again. And the Celtics still, I think, within the final minute, had a couple more possessions where they could have either tied it or cut it back to 1 again. Couldn't do it. And then it came down to Indiana up 3 with 8 seconds left with the ball. So it's all you got to do is inbound. And I'm this game is over. They inbounded. That inbound pass happened almost right in front of where I was. Turnover. They turn it over. One of their many turnovers in the game. Everybody started going nuts, but of course the Celtics still need to score. So it's what are they going to do? They called the timeout. They drew up a play, which was the shot, I guess. I don't know if it was as drawn up, really, but they got it to Brown. It was not a very high percentage shot, let's say. He was way over in the corner across from me there. I think who was it that was on him? Siakam? Some defender was right on him, and he potentially maybe got fouled on that shot. I don't know. The foul wasn't called. It's one of those situations that the refs are probably going to let it go. The refs seem to be letting a lot go last night. But yeah, that shot, Brown, contested 3, throws it up. I could not believe that went in. Everybody went crazy. Indiana still had 5 seconds left at that point to do something. They took a very low percentage 3. Halliburton, who is probably their best 3-point shooter, but he was way out. He wasn't going to hit that. Well defended. Goes into overtime. Celtics didn't play that great in overtime either. Overtime was weird, feeling out process with these two teams that could score a lot. Nobody scored in the first minute plus of overtime. Then I think Indiana struck first in overtime, and it was getting, oh man, we're getting a little, this is getting bad. Celtics were able to hang in there. I think they were down 3, cut it back to 1, and then took the 1-point lead, and then it was back and forth a little bit, and then the Celtics were able to string together a couple of scoring possessions in a row to push it up to 3-5, and then that was basically it. And then the refs actually tried to I don't know what the refs were doing there, but it was they were trying to let Indiana hang around further, because after the Celtics were up 5, I think Indiana had scored, but then I think the Celtics scored to push it back to 5. And then there was something happened where it looked like the Celtics were getting the ball back on a rebound or out of bounds play or something, and a loose ball foul was called, giving Indiana, because it was in the penalty at this point, in the bonus, giving Indiana the 2 free throws, which was well, I forget what his name is. Obi Toppin, is that his name? Toppin, giving him 2 free throws to cut it back to 3. It's like, oh my God, it's a 1-possession game. And I think it was a 3-point lead for the Celtics with 8 seconds left in overtime, just like it was a 3-point lead for Indiana with 8 seconds left in regulation. All they had to do was inbound, and all the Celtics have to do is inbound. And in this case, like, don't turn it over. But yeah, they did not turn it over. They were able to get it inbounds and actually get it up court a bit and delay the foul as well. I believe Tatum wound up getting fouled, hit the free throws, and then that was it. Crazy game. One of the most exciting games that I've been to. It was awesome. It was fun, and lost the bet on it. Celtics did not cover. All right, move on to today. It's like I'm not controlling myself today, man. I have too many plays. First up, I'm going to have a play in this Eastern Conference final in the NHL, Florida, New York Rangers. This is one of those situations where the market is kind of just telling you what you need to know. Florida started out as a plus 102 underdog, it looks like, and they flipped to a minus 110 favorite. They're a small favorite in this game on the road at New York, and they're a favorite to win the series by about minus 150. So this is one of those ones. So they're minus 110 now. It's one of these ones where the public is going to look and think, you're giving me like an underdog on the Rangers. Like, how can I not do that? Like, the books have made a mistake, man. Yeah, no, the books don't make mistakes. Although I was wrong about the Carolina series, sort of, but Carolina outplayed the Rangers in that series, man. It was just Shesterkin was playing out of his mind, and potentially he could play out of his mind again in this series, but the odds makers are telling you what you need to know, telling you that Carolina was the better team, and they're telling you that Florida was the better team, man. These President's Trophy winners a lot of times can be overvalued. Everybody's picking the Rangers. Rangers are public in the market here with 67% of the tickets, but only 62% of the cash. So market read here looks like what you want, with the Rangers being a public square home underdog in this case. Florida, with line movement on Florida, reverse line movements. That's, I think, all you kind of need to know here. And Rangers are also coming off like the more difficult series. I think the Bruins really didn't put up that much of a fight. I think Florida kind of had an easy time of it, whereas the Rangers were in like a pretty tough battle, I would say, against Carolina. That was a crazy series with like multiple overtime games and just crazy stuff going on, and Carolina kept staying in it. So both series went 6 games. I think both teams have been off for a while now, so I don't know if there's really that much of a rest edge one way or the other. But the public, like the people, are just saying, like, basically, they've been handing the Rangers the conference for the entire playoffs so far, and I think probably the feeling was Rangers, Carolina are the top 2 teams in the conference. They play each other in the conference semifinals. Whoever wins that is the Eastern Conference winner, man. Even though Florida won it last year, I think everybody's just overlooking Florida here. But Florida then is also going to have that experience factor coming into play. Although the Rangers, of course, with these guys have been in the playoffs as well. So it's not like they lack experience, but Florida has been here. They were here last year and they won it. So they could certainly do it again. I think they do have a little bit of the experience edge here. So all of that's going to line me up on Florida, man. Public saying one thing and the market saying the other thing. So Florida is going to be the play in the NHL minus 110. Move on to the NBA, where it looks like the market is kind of disagreeing with me on this one, but I'm going to come in and take the Dallas Mavericks plus the points here, plus 4.5. I think you can still get. It's out there. It's been 4.5. It looks like it dropped to 4, but pregame is saying it opened T-Wolves minus 3 and then moved up to 4, through the 4 to 4.5. I don't know about that. I see 57% of the tickets on the T-Wolves, 58% of the cash. Don't know if that's going to change at all because this game isn't until 8:30 p.m. Eastern, so it's going to be a while until this game happens. But the public, you got to think they are on the T-Wolves here, even though the market is the percentages here are telling you it's 57% right now. Seems like the T-Wolves are just being handed not only the conference but the championship in some ways, because the Celtics are choke artists, whatever. Everybody's handing Minnesota the championship at this point. And yes, Minnesota probably is the best defensive team in the NBA, but experience still matters, man. When you get this deep into the playoffs, and the Mavericks have more experience, man. I mean, they have Kyrie and Luka. Luka has been in the finals before, I think, and Kyrie has been in the playoffs many, many times. And Kyrie also, I saw this crazy stat where his teams are actually 14-0 in elimination, in closeout games and series. So when they have the chance to eliminate their opponent, his teams are 14-0, which is really crazy to think about. So if the Mavs get to 3 wins first, that might become a factor, and maybe they'll be able to get that win to advance. Who knows? But the Mavs also play pretty decent defense. I mean, the T-Wolves play really good defense. Both of these teams are good defensively. Both of these teams can score. Both of these teams have star power. So I think it's a fairly evenly matched series where the T-Wolves are not that heavy a favorite to win the series. It's really just kind of like they're getting home court and maybe like slightly more. They're the slightly better team, I would say. But the Mavs, I think, are being discounted. And as far as the rest edge, I think the Mavs might have a little bit of extra rest coming into this one, although I don't know if that would turn into rust, like I was saying with the Celtics last night. I don't think it did. I just think the game just kind of wound up being a close game, and fatigue just didn't really set in for Indiana. A lot of young guys on that team, but same goes for the T-Wolves, though, so maybe they won't be fatigued either. But the T-Wolves just played a 7-game series against one of the other better defenses in basketball, man. The Denver Nuggets, like, you come off that, like, letdowns aren't really a thing in the playoffs, but if they were, this would have to kind of be one, right? Like, if you're going to have any sort of like letdown or hangover, don't you think it would be after a 7-game series? We had to win the last 2 games of that series to win, which, of course, was what Indiana did in their prior series, and it didn't work out last night for playing against them. But this is like even more crazy probably because the T-Wolves did that, winning the last 2 games, having to win both, although the Game 6 was kind of out of hand early, so they didn't have to exert as much of an effort in that one. Game 7, big effort in that one. The T-Wolves had to make a giant comeback in that one, man. They were down 20 in the third quarter, so they had to put in a ton of effort in that one to overcome the reigning NBA champion Denver Nuggets. So if there's going to be a letdown at all, it would have to be in a situation like this, right? Where you're down in the series 3-2, you win in a blowout, then you fall down 20 points on the road in Game 7 in the second half, and you overcome that and win anyway. Mavs had kind of an easier time of it, I think, getting through, even though that was a tough physical series too against Oklahoma City. Mavs, that series ended first as well. So the Mavs maybe have a little bit of time to nurse their wounds. Of course, Luka is playing injured, as I keep saying. He has like an injured knee, 2 injured ankles at this point. He continues to just like grit it out there. And he's been not at 100%, but he's been playing well enough to keep them going. So all that being said, yeah, I'm going to be on the Dallas Mavericks in that game. Talking about the total, and that one sets Mavs plus 4.5. It could be an intense like defensive game as well. So I was about to mention that on the total here. It's gone up from 208 to 208 with juice. I don't know what to think about the fact that the total seems to be moving up a little bit, but 60% of the tickets, 61% of the cash. So it looks like the cash discrepancy is actually slightly on the over. And that one, I would not want that with 2 teams that play pretty good defense in a game 1 in a situation where you might see intense defense. Although are the T-Wolves going to be like not well rested enough after that previous series? I don't know, because they aren't playing 2 days later. I think they're playing 3 days later in this case. So they had an extra day because I think their series ended the same day that the other Game 7 was, the Pacers game, I believe. So although the T-Wolves game was the later of the 2 at night, but they had an extra day off after that. So they have a little bit more rest than the Pacers did. But still, I will take the Mavericks in that one. And then moving over to Major League Baseball. Hey, I'm not going to play on Jared Jones for once, even though the market looks like it's moving in that direction. He's actually facing a San Francisco team that actually saw him already this year. So I don't really want to do that in that one. Major League Baseball, I am going to have 3 plays, though. Where do we want to go here first? Let's see. The first one I'll talk about will be, well, we got two afternoon games that are both totals. I'll talk about one first, which is Angels and Houston. I like this to go over the total. I'm actually going to play a full game over the 9. It looks like it opened 9. It's still at 9. The over looks like it is drawing some public action. Oh, this is baseball, so I don't know how many public bettors are really going to come in and be playing an over in some random baseball game. But although this is a game involving the Astros, so they are a team that gets more kind of play in the marketplace than some other teams. But 72% of the tickets are on the over in this one, but 78% of the cash. So it looks like we do have the cash discrepancy in this one. I like the over in this one, man. You take a look at what's going on in the series. Yesterday, these two teams played yesterday, of course, and it was a 10-inning game. So that's going to have me looking towards potentially playing an over because it means that more of the bullpen was used, which is true. So Astros won in 10 innings yesterday. It was a 6-5 game. So, yeah, I mean, that game did go over as well, but that's not going to deter me from this because the line is at 9. I don't think the line is too high in this one, given all that's going on in this one. I think 9 is kind of like an average MLB total, and I think that this line should probably be a little bit higher. So Houston, I mean, both teams had put together some decent offense yesterday. I think probably the total is low because it has to account for the fact that the Angels can't hit. But when we look at the pitching matchup, I think that's going to become clear that the Angels probably should be able to put up some runs in this game, and they did yesterday. So yesterday in that extra inning game, Astros used 4 of their relief pitchers. They had to bring in their bullpen in the 5th inning. Javier did not go very far. And then on the other side, Griffin Canning for the Angels, not very good, only went 5 innings. And they wound up using 5 of their relief pitchers. And because it was a close game, some of the better relievers on each team came in too. So both of these bullpens fairly shot coming into this game. So that seems fine for me as far as playing the over. These teams have a lot of their relievers unavailable. And then looking at the starting pitching, I think Tyler Anderson for the Angels, his stats, I think, are maybe a little bit misleading so far this season, man. He's got a 2.72 ERA and 1.07 whip. So, I mean, that whip isn't misleading as far as like how it corresponds to his ERA. Yeah, his stats are good this year, but look at his other stats, man. He has 40 strikeouts and 56 and a third, so he's not a very good strikeout pitcher, and he has 21 walks. So his control has not been very good all season, man. So bad strikeout walk numbers there. Not very good strikeout numbers. He doesn't come in and blow people away, but he's only allowed 39 hits. So maybe he's getting a little bit lucky. I don't know what he's doing to be that unhittable this season, really. I mean, he's faced more weak offenses than strong offenses so far this year, I would say. And he's been pretty good this month so far, though still with too many walks and kind of a low strikeout rate there, strikeout number. He does go decently deep into games, so I will give him that. He tends to go more than 6 innings in most of his games. So yeah, that's true. I'll give him that. So maybe he'll be able to rescue the pen a little bit as far as that's concerned. But look at his career numbers, man. I mean, they're way worse than what he has this year. And he's not a young guy. He's 34. So you have to expect some regression. 4.26 ERA, 1.27 whip on his career, and similar strikeout walk numbers. So what I just laid out. Never a guy who comes in and blows people away, really, and he kind of has too many walks, really. Last year was his first season with Anaheim, and he did not have good numbers last season. In 25 starts and 2 relief appearances, he had a 5.43 ERA and 1.49 whip. So it's like, what do you expect out of him, man? I don't know, because the season prior to that with the Dodgers, he actually had like his best season of his career with a 2.57 ERA and 1 whip. So I don't know what that was. That Dodger season seems to be an outlier to me, though. Maybe it was because he was pitching in kind of a weaker offensive division to some extent. Well, I don't know, because the Dodgers tend to be a good hitting team, but they also have good pitching parks in that division, except for Colorado. I don't know. And Arizona. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about, really. But it seems like you get better pitching in that division for whatever reason. I'm not even sure. But I think that was a fluke because all the rest of his seasons throughout his career have been not very good. So I think you can say that season with the Dodgers is kind of an outlier. And then last year with Anaheim, he really crashed down and actually had his worst season. And I don't think you all of a sudden turn it around and like turn into like a really good pitcher and have an ERA 2 runs lower for no reason all of a sudden when you're 34 on the same team you're on last year. I tend to doubt that. And then looking at his numbers against the Houston Astros, this is where it really all comes into shape here as far as the over is concerned. We got a good sample size against these Astros hitters, the Astros hitters look like they're finally starting to come around. They have good hitters on this team. Career, they're 25 for 66 lifetime off of Anderson. 2 doubles, 3 triples, 5 home runs, only a 15.9 strikeout walk ratio. So that amounts to a 379 batting average of 1,211 OPS. So his stats are really, really bad against these Houston hitters. And then on the other side, I've talked about him before, man. Hunter Brown, he's just not good. I'm sorry. He's got a 7.71 ERA this year, 1.93 whip. Hey, his whip has dropped below 2 finally. He's struggling, man. He doesn't go deep into games, unlike Anderson, who kind of does. But Anderson, I expect maybe to start regressing as far as like the number of runs that he's allowed. Hunter Brown has just not been great on the entire season, really. He does have 41 strikeouts and 37 and a third, so he's a better strikeout pitcher than Anderson, but he's given up 51 hits and 21 walks over that span. So he's putting so many men on base. And yeah, his whip is finally below 2. Yeah, yay for him. But he's just struggled, man. And he tends to go about 5 innings, basically on average, and like his like average performances, maybe not even 5. He has faced a few difficult offenses, though. More difficult offenses than Anderson has, maybe to some extent. But we're going with an over in this one. We're not relying on one pitcher to beat the other here. We're relying on both pitchers to beat themselves. And even though Anaheim hasn't really seen him much, we have a small sample size here with only 5 of their hitters having seen him before. It hasn't even mattered. It was like the first time they saw this guy, they were able to hit him because they're 5 for 10 off him. With a double, he only has 1 strikeout against him, 1 walk. It's a 500 average and 1,145 OPS. So I think this pitching matchup and the bullpen scenario, whatever, as my camera gets blurry again, great, is all conducive to playing an over here. Over 9 runs in Anaheim, Houston. Yeah, there we go. I'll just be even blurrier for the rest of the video. All right, we're back. So that's going to be that play. The other total I'm going to be on is an under, and this is a low total to be playing an under, man, but I like this one in Detroit, Kansas City. This is also an afternoon game in the central time zone there. We get both of these games around the same time at 2:10 my time Eastern. Detroit, Kansas City. This one we've seen a 7.5 juice to the over opener go all the way down to 7 juice to the over. I think you'd still find 7.5s with slight juice on the under, I think. So I think 7.5 minus 115, under 7.5 minus 115, I think is still out there. That might be the best that you can kind of find out there right now. You could play an under 7 at even money, maybe. You're under 7, you're starting to get a little bit dicey there. The line that I took might actually be gone. I don't know. We see this line continue to go down a little bit, and it's starting to get a little bit dicey if you're not getting that hook on the 7.5, because 7 is a key number in baseball, man, because of course it's the odd number. It's the number that you need to break the tie, right? If you have a 3-3 tie, that 7th run, is what breaks the tie. But I like this, man. This is a solid pitching matchup to play an under here. And I think 2 offenses that maybe are not exactly the best, even though Kansas City's been playing pretty well recently. But we also have seen 2 really high scores in this series so far, with 8-3 and 10-3 wins for Kansas City in both of these games in the series so far. So the public is probably going to come in and not want to play on under in this one. And it does look like we have pros versus Joes in the market in this one. I don't know how much the public is coming in on this, but we have 61% of the tickets on the over, but 64% of the cash on the under. So we do see reverse line movement on the under here. The total, as low as it is, we see it creeping down with some of the money coming in on the under, and we see the cash percentages on the under, despite the higher ticket percentage being on the over. So I like that. Like I said, the recreational bettors are probably not going to want to come in and play an under on a game like this, even if it is a Detroit offense that's kind of weak. The public likes offense, and they see 11 and 13 runs being scored in the first 2 games of the series, so they kind of like that. The bullpen situation I don't think is horrible for either team. Each team used 3 relief pitchers yesterday. Mize for the Tigers really did not do well. I pointed out that pitching matchup, and that was another one of those leans I was right on. Marsh had a much better game than Mize did. Mize was gone like before the second inning was even up. But Detroit came in and used a long relief, man. Holton for 3 1/3. So they were pretty much able to save most of their pen. So they only used 3 relief pitchers, even though Mize went out really early. Marsh pitched fairly deep into the game, and Kansas City wound up using 3 of their relievers. Maybe saving some of their better relievers for maybe a close, low-scoring game like we might have today. So I think that's good. The bullpen situation is not horrible. I mean, it's double negative. No, it is not horrible. So I think that's going to be fine. And then we look at the starting pitching matchup, man. Hopefully these starting pitchers can go deep into this game because this is a matchup of 2 pretty good pitchers, man. Let me see. And I think we still even get maybe a little bit of an edge when you look at like how these pitchers do specifically against the opposing lineups. I cannot prevent my camera from unfocusing. I hate it. All right. So Tariq Skubal is pitching for Detroit. I mean, he's turned into their ace, man. He's 27 years old now. He might be like in his prime now, man. I mean, this guy, there's nothing to dislike about what this guy's done, really. He's 6-0 this season, so he's had some run support behind him, at least, for his sake. Hopefully not as much in this game if we're playing it under. But he's got a 1.8 ERA and 0.78 whip. I mean, those stats are probably not sustainable, but like if you look at his career, he's just been getting better and better over these seasons. He's been in the league since 2020, had kind of a rocky start, but his whip was never really that high. His strikeout numbers were always like fairly good. And walk numbers actually are always pretty low too. So he's always had a good strikeout walk ratio throughout his career, and his numbers just kind of keep getting increasingly good. So like he's trending in a good direction. I like this. Last season, great season. Even the season before that, really good. Like he can't sustain numbers that are as good as they are this season, but there's nothing to dislike about him, man. He's faced some pretty strong lineups. Well, a mix of like strong and weak, but he's faced a bunch of tough lineups here this season, man. So it hasn't been that easy for him. I mean, he's faced Texas, which was the only game that he pitched where they lost, I think. They lost to the Yankees too. So he faced the Yankees. He had a really good start in that one too, but they just didn't win it for him. And then Houston, Arizona, he's faced some good offenses. He's just been dealing, man, and dominating. Like in the month of May, even against those really good offenses of Yankees, Astros, D-backs. He has good numbers in May, 25-2 strikeout walk ratio in May, with 14 hits allowed and 18 1/3. Just insane. Over the entire season, 55 innings, only 35 hits allowed and 8 walks. Absolutely insane. And 66 strikeouts. This guy's been coming in just, dealing like game after game. And Kansas City, he did face them back on April 28th. So yes, Kansas City has seen him before. So does that give me a bit of hesitation? Maybe slightly. Because once a team is familiar with a pitcher and they've seen him recently, they tend to do better against him. But still, we're talking about an ace, a guy that has such good stuff that I don't know if it's going to matter that much. Kansas City, I mean, they have an okay lineup. I don't know that it's the best, but we got a big sample size to work with here. I mean, Skubal has been in their division for his entire career, so they have a lot of at-bats off him, and they've been able to hit him like, I mean, their offensive stats are pretty low against him, let's say. Not as good as what he's done over the course of this season, but Kansas City is 20 for 86 off him lifetime, 5 doubles, a triple, 3 home runs. He has a 25-2 strikeout walk ratio against them, so same as what he has in the month of May right now overall. It's a 233 batting average and 669 OPS. So you'd kind of like to see that OPS be a little bit lower, but it's certainly not that high, and it's a low batting average and nice strikeout walk numbers. So Skubal has been pretty good against Kansas City, and Kansas City is the better of these two offenses here. And then looking on the other side, you got Cole Reagans pitching for Kansas City, and he's one of their better young arms as well. He's got a 3.7 ERA this year, 1.2 whip. Those are not bad stats. He's a 26-year-old. He seems to be getting better as well. He started his career in a less pitcher-friendly environment, I guess we could say, with Texas. Didn't have that many appearances, though, so I don't know what you can really take away from it. His numbers weren't as good in Texas, really. He started 9 games in 2022 with them, and then he was a relief man in 2023 with them until he came over to Kansas City. Must have been traded or something last season, and then he really started turning it on, man, with Kansas City as a starter. He was really good for them last year with 12 starts, a 2.64 ERA and 1.07 whip over 12 starts. So I don't think these numbers are really a fluke. I think his numbers this year they're not quite as good as they were last year, but I think we're seeing that he's a pretty good pitcher, man. And maybe Kansas City just has the right coaches or whatever. I don't know. Or maybe he's just developing at this point. But he's turned into a pretty good pitcher. And his strikeout numbers have gone up with Kansas City, too, to the point where he's averaging well more than one an inning now with them. And his walk numbers aren't exactly that high either. He's been dealing it, too, man. I mean, he's got an 18.5 strikeout walk ratio in the month of May with a 19 1/3 innings pitch. He's been going deep into most of these games, which is pretty good to see. Those were against the Brewers, who are a pretty good hitting team, but then against some weak offenses in Anaheim and Oakland. Sure, he's faced some tough offenses throughout the season, though. Toronto twice, Houston, Baltimore twice. So he hasn't really had like that easy of a schedule, really. And he's pitched pretty well. 56 innings pitched this season, only 49 hits allowed. 18 walks, maybe a little bit high, but 64 strikeouts. So pretty good strikeout walk ratio as well. Good stats this season versus the Detroit Tigers. They haven't seen him that much, actually. They've only seen him 19 at bats worth. And Gio Urshela, how do you pronounce his name? I don't know. Urshela has the Ursula, the sea witch, has the only hit that Detroit has against them. They're 1 for 19 off him lifetime, with that one hit being a triple, which is weird. 7-2 strikeout walk ratio against them. It's an 0.53 batting average and 301 OPS. It's a small sample size, but Reagan's has had good numbers against these Detroit hitters, and their offense is a pretty weak offense, man. So under is going to be the way to go in that one, even though it looks kind of crazy to be taking an under in these low totals. I mean, the books are kind of telling you what to think in a lot of these situations. So a lot of times you tend to want to play when it looks like it's really difficult to take that under when the line's like really low like this, or it's really difficult to take that over when the line is like really high like this. That tends to be the way that you actually want to go, going with the extreme. So we'll do that one. And then to finish this off, I'm going to play against my Boston Red Sox. I'm going to have one side in Major League Baseball in the evening slate here, 6:50 Eastern. Tampa trying to avoid the sweep, which is a situation that I like. And this is at Tampa. Tampa's up from -115 to -125. So we see the market moving in that direction. Tampa's a little bit public with 66% of the tickets, but seemingly not public enough because they have 85% of the cash too, and the line is moving up on Tampa. So it looks like some of the money is indeed coming in on the Tampa side. And I agree with it. Tampa is trying to avoid the sweep. So that's a spot that I tend to like to look at when you have a team that might actually be the better team, especially and they're at home and they're trying to avoid a sweep here. The Red Sox, with the 2 wins in the series, have overtaken Tampa in the standings by a half game now. And I don't think Tampa's going to want to let that stand, man. Tampa came into the season ahead of Boston. They're going to want to exit this series also ahead of Boston. So I think we're going to see a good effort from Tampa here, and maybe the Red Sox will get a little bit complacent, having now beaten Tampa twice and jumped them in the standings. I think Tampa is probably not worse than the Red Sox are either. I think the Red Sox are probably not the better team, but of course it's going to come down to the pitching matchup. So we got to look at the specific pitching matchup, and we got to look at the bullpens. What do we get for the bullpens yesterday? Well, both teams kind of used their pens a bit yesterday. Neither pitcher made it through 6 innings in the game yesterday. Both teams used 4 relief pitchers yesterday. The Red Sox won, had to use their best relievers to hold off Tampa. So they used the back end of their bullpen to get the holds, get the save there. Tampa used a few of their better relievers because the game was pretty close until the late innings there where the Red Sox opened it up. The Red Sox are actually losing, and then they tied it in the 6th inning and then won with runs in the 8th and 9th. So Tampa had some of their better relievers in too and blew it. Both of these teams' bullpens have actually been pitching pretty decently, but both teams also used a decent amount of their bullpens yesterday. So I think the bullpen situation can kind of get it's a little bit of a wash, I would say. So I don't think that really factors in that much. It's not like a situation where I want to take it out of the equation. I just think that, excuse me, even though we're going with the starting pitching matchup here, I still think a full game is good because I think Tampa, you want that extra motivation. They have to actually win the game and avoid the sweep to come into play with the full game scenario here. So that's what I'm doing. And then looking at the starting pitching matchup, it might upon first look like this is a matchup between two good pitchers here. Brian Bayo pitching for the Red Sox. I mean, he is their ace, if they even can be considered to have an ace. Well, I don't know, because Tanner Houck and who else do the Red Sox have? They've had a couple other starters who've actually outpitched Bayo so far this season, with Houck and I forget who else they even have. Cutter Crawford, I think, have both been pitching pretty well this season. Bayo has a 3.96 ERA. That's certainly not bad. And a 1.13 whip. That's pretty good. So he's pitched pretty well. I believe he missed a stretch of about a month, late April into early May with an injury. Came back. Since he's come back, he hasn't fared that well, really, against offenses that weren't that good. In the month of May, struggling against Washington and St. Louis, going only 9 2/3 combined across those two starts. 11 hits allowed over that span, 7 earned runs, 4 home runs allowed, and a 5.2 strikeout walk ratio. So he's been struggling since he came off the DL. So I don't know what to think about that. Prior to that, the only good offense that he had faced on the season was Baltimore, and he didn't do great in that game either. So I think that his numbers may be a little bit misleading, man, because he's faced a lot of weak offenses, although Tampa Bay doesn't have the best offense either. Excuse me, but looking at how Tampa does against Bayo, I mean, we have a big sample size to look at, and they have done well against it. They're 22 for 54 off him, 6 doubles, 2 home runs, 15 RBIs, a lot of runs scored against him, which is crazy. 9 to 7 strikeout walk ratio. So that's not a good strikeout walk ratio either. It amounts to a 407 opponent batting average for Tampa's hitters, even though I don't think their hitters are that good. In 54 at bats, 407 off of Bayo. That is a crazy stat there, and such a decent sized sample there to have that type of batting average. They're like Ted Williamsing against Brian Bayo. So he has really struggled against these Tampa hitters, and it's a 1,105 OPS. That's pretty crazy, man. Bayo's stats against Tampa, very, very bad. So I like Tampa in this one. And then looking at the other side of the pitching matchup, Ryan Pepiot is pitching. He's a guy who I believe Tampa got in a trade. He must have been involved in that Glasnow trade with the LA Dodgers, where teams swapped their long-haired starting pitchers, I guess, who are both pretty good pitchers. I don't know which one of these pitchers is actually better. Pepiot is not really familiar to a lot of these American League teams because this is his first season with Tampa, I think. And he's been hurt, so he's coming off the DL. So I like this when a pitcher's coming off the DL. I think maybe sometimes you tend to get a little bit of an advantage with that pitcher because people are going to think, oh, this guy's coming off the DL. Maybe he's not ready yet, whatever. But like I keep saying, if team is bringing him back and they're going to have him starting in a major league game, they're telling you that he's ready to come back, man. Like, he's rehabbed, like he's ready to go. They know that he's ready to go. So I think that's fine for Pepiot. He was pitching, he pitched all the way for the season up until May 5th when he got injured. So he pitched a decent chunk of the season so far. So those are his stats with Tampa so far. He's got a 3.68 ERA. So the public might be coming in and looking and thinking, oh, the starting pitching matchup is close. Both these guys have similar ERAs. Pepiot's whip is actually better than Bayo's. His ERA is slightly better too, but his whip is 0.93. Good whip there for Pepiot. Looking at his stats on the season, these are good stats, man. 36 2/3 innings pitched, only 23 hits allowed. 11 walks is a little high. So, yeah, he's a little bit wild, but he's got 41 strikeouts. So a good strikeout walk ratio still with a lot of strikeouts. A lot of strikeouts for the amount of innings that he's pitched as well. And he's been pretty unhittable. He's allowed very few hits. So that's good. I forgot to mention Bayo's stats there in the season. He's given up 32 hits and 36 1/3, which is not horrible either. And he's got 31-9 strikeout walk ratio. So Bayo, pretty good strikeout walk ratio, really. Not a lot of walks, not a lot of hits allowed. So he's been pretty good, but his strikeout rate is actually not that great. So I think Pepiot is the better strikeout pitcher, as we can see for those numbers I just laid out. Even though Pepiot may be a little bit more wild, I don't think it's by that much, really. And we just outlined Bayo's stats, why I think maybe he's going to regress a little bit. Pepiot, I think, has faced a couple of more difficult offenses. Maybe he's had a little bit more of a difficult schedule so far than Bayo has. But Pepiot, I think, if you just look at his stats, I think you can kind of tell he's like the better pitcher just based on his strikeout numbers, etc. I think he's the better pitcher. And then where we get the rest of the edge here is that the Red Sox aside from Garrett Cooper, who has seen him and is 0 for 2 off him with a strikeout. Nobody else on the Red Sox has ever seen Pepio. So I think that's where we get the rest of the edge here. You have the starting pitcher, man, who has never been seen before by these opposing hitters. That's an advantage to the starting pitcher. So I think we get the advantage here with Pepio, man. I think he's the better pitcher anyway, and he hasn't been seen before by these Red Sox hitters. So they might not be prepared for it. They might not know what they're about to face with them. Tampa, motivated to try to avoid the sweep. We'll go with Pepio there. So that's going to do it, man. We got a packed card here today. Maybe I'm not restraining myself enough because we've had a bad week here, man. We got to get back on track. I was hot before this, doing really well, and now we're backsliding, and it's got to stop, man. I mean, baseball, earlier season baseball plus NBA playoffs tends to be good for me, like bread and butter type of stuff. Let's get it done, man. In baseball, we got the afternoon totals with LA, Anaheim, and Houston over 9. Which I actually got a reduced juice, minus 102. Detroit, Kansas City, under 7.5, minus 115 is the best I could have found on that. Tampa Bay Rays, money line to win against Boston, minus 122. And then what else we got? NBA, we got, let me see, NBA, which I'm trying to go in order of how they start, man. NHL, Florida Panthers, minus 110, unfortunately. I mean, even though I don't even want them to win. After what they've done to my Bruins. No, thank you. And NBA Dallas Mavericks plus 4.5. Let's do it. Peace.